So the DJI Air 2S has been out for approximately 6 months now, and all the footage that I just showed you at the beginning of this video was filmed on the Air 2S in the early spring up until about a week ago. Now, I'm not a particularly skilled pilot or a cinematographer, but when I look back at the footage that I filmed this summer, I think it's pretty good. And that's definitely not because of my skill as a pilot, but all due to the drone and the tools that it offers. The DJI Air 2S has a pretty incredible camera, and with all the built-in tools for capturing content, it makes it easy to get nice dynamic footage that looks really good. Now, it was about this time last year that I did a long-term review of the original Mavic Air 2, and in that video I stated how it quickly became one of my favorite drones to fly. But one of the things that I did miss on it was the 1-inch sensor from the Mavic 2 Pro. Well, earlier this spring, DJI surprised us with a new version, so that took what was my favorite drone at the time and just made it even better. I can clearly say without a doubt that the Air 2S has probably been one of my favorite drones to fly of all time. That's comparing it to the Autel Evo 2, which I really like, the Phantom 4 Pro, and even the Mavic 2 Pro. There's a lot of things I really like about it, and we'll kind of talk about that as we go along here. Now, the first thing that I like that DJI did this year with the upgraded Mavic Air 2S is that we didn't have to go out and buy all new accessories. If you owned the original Mavic Air and you had extra batteries, custom cases, all that stuff was compatible. You could use the Mavic Air 2 batteries with the Air 2S. If you purchased a hard shell case for the original Mavic Air 2, the DJI Air 2S fit into those cases without any issue, so it was really nice that we didn't have to go out and buy all that stuff again. The only thing you did have to upgrade is if you had any specific filters that you like to use. Of course, because the camera was different, those old lenses and filters would not fit. But of all the new features and capabilities of the Air 2S, I think my favorite one is Focus Track. Now, if you're watching this because you're new to drones and you're still thinking about what drone to purchase, Focus Track is basically a tool that DJI has built into the Fly app. Now, Focus Track doesn't work with the mini series, only the original Air 2 and the Air 2S. And basically, it's a combination of 3 tools that's really easy to use. With Focus Track, you can select an object on your screen and select one of the tools that you want to use. There's Spotlight 2.0, Point of Interest 3.0, and Active Track 4.0. Now, I'm not a person who does a lot with Active Track. However, it does come in handy when you want to get some kind of dynamic shots around a moving subject. For example, here in this clip here, I'm filming a tractor. I have the tractor selected, and I could just let the drone follow the tractor around. However, with the Focus Track, you can actually move the control sticks. The tractor will still remain in focus, and you can fly around in any direction you want. While still locked onto that tractor, you can also initiate a point of interest, so that even though the tractor's moving, the drone will still circle around it and keep it in the center of the screen. But what I think I like most about it is the Spotlight feature. Again, if you pick a stationary subject, you can fly around it. You can change your altitude, your speed, you can fly closer to the subject or farther away, and it's going to keep it locked in the middle of the screen. That allows you to get some really dynamic shots. Shots where you're changing altitude and angle of the camera. Now, this is all stuff you could do just on the control sticks, and mind you, it is a good idea to learn to do that stuff. But if you're a brand new pilot just learning, you can get those really interesting shots that take a long time to learn. If you look at this example here, this is using Spotlight. You can see I had that lighthouse locked on the screen. And just by flying around in different directions, you can get some really interesting shots. Shots aren't quite as boring as just flying over something or flying beside something. And on top of that, they introduced Master Shots this year. Master Shots is very similar to Quick Shots, except it's a lot more advanced. All you do is select your subject, you hit start, and the drone's going to perform various moves. It'll even make use of the FPV gimbal mode and the zoom capabilities. When it's done, you have the raw video that you can go in and chop up and edit yourself, or you can use one of their pre-made templates and it's going to do a little auto edit for you. And they actually turn out pretty good. I've actually shared quite a few on social media. So between the Focus Track tools and Master Shots, a complete beginner can get up and film pretty incredible content without a lot of experience. That's kind of the nice thing about DJI drones. They're easy to fly, they're reliable, they have a ton of fail-safe features. So no matter what your skill level, you're going to capture really nice content. Now, as mentioned, this came out in the early spring, so I was able to fly it in a wide variety of weather. Here in Canada, our springs can be all over the place, but shortly after this was launched, we actually got a snap of cold weather and we got some snow again. So I was able to test it out in cold weather. Now, one of the things they did change with the Air 2S over the original Air 2, the original Mavic Air 2 could operate all the way down to -10 degrees. The Air 2S is only rated at 0 degrees. However, I have flown it in much colder weather, and it performed just fine. As long as you keep your batteries warm and keep the flights short, there should be no issue at all. But if you have to go below a few degrees of what it's rated as, it's going to fly just fine. Another thing, I would like to mention how durable this drone is. I actually had a crash with it, and it's actually the first drone I've crashed in a very long time. Now, no drone pilot likes to admit when they've crashed a drone. And the crash that I did with it was actually, well, it was my fault. Most drone crashes are. It was just one of those really dumb mistakes, a split-second thing. I was flying off the coast. There was a lighthouse off in the distance. And I've flown there many times. I was there in the early spring, midsummer, and late summer, early fall. When I was there in the summertime, there was some extra birds that weren't there in the early spring, some migratory birds. When I got back from flying at the lighthouse, which was about 2.5 kilometers offshore, and I seen a few of these blackbirds swooping around, not a big deal, and I was just sitting there hovering. But within probably 10 seconds, there was at least 50, maybe even upwards of 100, all swooping in and around my drone. I think they were probably protecting their nests all up and down the cliffs. Bird strikes are always something you have to be concerned about with a drone. Obviously, you don't want to hurt any birds, but they can also cause your drone to crash. At the time when I was hovering, I was still out over the water, so my first instinct was just to push the stick forward, get away from the birds, and get it over land in case it did happen to fall. I was in sport mode, probably only about 20 feet away from the coast. I just hit full stick forward. And of course, there's no obstacle avoidance, and it just went right into a tree before I had a chance to stop it. Now, this thing hit a tree probably about 30, maybe 40 feet up, and it fell down to the ground right at my feet. And for whatever reasons, the motors didn't stop. This thing was like flopping around all over the place around my feet. And I ended up getting injured quite badly. I had quite a few gashes on my legs. As painful as it was, my only concern at the time was my poor Air 2S is going to be destroyed. But I picked it up and I examined it, and to my surprise, there wasn't even a blemish on it. There was really no scuffing, except on the camera there, a little bit of that paint had scraped off. The motor seemed to be okay. There was no major cracks in the body, the arms, everything seemed nice and solid still. But there was no major damage anywhere that I could tell. There was no scuffs on the body. The motor seemed good. The arms seemed good. I powered the drone off. I recalibrated everything. I calibrated the IMU, the gimbal, did a compass calibration, put the drone up 5 minutes later, and everything was fine. The drone flew with no issue. That was early summer, and I've probably done another 20 to 30 flights on it since then, and yeah, it flies perfectly, so that really impressed me. I'm not saying that every crash you're not going to damage something. It depends on how it falls. With the launch of the Air 2S, DJI included Ocusync 3.0, or O3 is what they're calling it now. The original Mavic Air 2 did have good range, but with O3 it is a little bit better. Now, I'm a person who doesn't really fly all that far, but there are some things like that lighthouse, for example. That's about 2.5 kilometers offshore. And by the time you go to the backside of it, you're probably almost 3 kilometers offshore. So having good range is really important in those kind of situations. Not to mention sometimes if there's a location I want to fly and there's a lot of people in that area, I don't want to take off right where everybody is. It's kind of nice to be a little bit stealth. You can park down the road, send the drone up, get to the location you want to film. That way you don't have to worry about people coming over to complain because, you know, not everybody's into drones or likes them. The Air 2S flies a little bit faster, which is always nice. It also included 10-bit D-Log mode, so if you're a person who wants to do some in-depth color grading, you're able to do so. Now, another really nice bonus is that DJI made the Air 2S compatible with the Smart Controller. Now, to me, that was kind of a pleasant bonus. When DJI launched the Smart Controller, they said they were going to make it compatible with all Ocusync 2.0 drones. So myself, when it was first launched, I didn't think it would be compatible, but for DJI to make it compatible is kind of a nice little bonus. Now, in my opinion, it doesn't have as good a flight experience as using the stock controller. The range isn't quite as good, and the feed coming back to the display is a little bit choppy. It's definitely more than usable, and the choppiness only happens once in a while. But either way, I'm just really happy that DJI did add support for the Smart Controller. Now, one thing that is missing that was kind of rumored when the Air 2S was first launched, and that was DJI was going to make it compatible with the FPV goggles and the motion controller. Now, that never came directly from DJI, that was just rumor, so it's not something you can really hold against DJI. They never claimed that it was going to be compatible. However, early on in the beta testing of the drone, many of the people who did get it early said that yes, indeed, it was compatible in some of the early builds. So that is kind of a shame. I thought it would have been a great experience to fly the Air 2S with the FPV goggles and even the motion controller. So that basically is my long-term review or 6-month review of the DJI Air 2S. As you can tell, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And this is the drone I recommend to anybody who asks. I get asked on a regular basis from friends, family, comments on my YouTube channel asking what drone they should get as a very first drone. And my answer is always very simple. If you have the budget for the Air 2S, definitely that is the drone to get. Whether you've never flown a drone before, or even if you have quite a bit of experience, the Air 2S is great for beginners, even people who want high performance. In my opinion, the quality is so good that it can even be used for some commercial work. Now, if you're more interested in the DJI Mini 2, I have a long-term review coming up of it in a couple weeks. Now, it's going to be a 1-year long-term review because it's been out for about a year at the end of this month. So in that video, I'll just go over my thoughts of it after flying it for a year, things I'd like to see improved, and what I would like to see DJI add on a version 3. Well, folks, I want to thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it and got some value out of it. Give it a thumbs up if you did. It's always greatly appreciated. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And we'll see you in the next one.